Hey everybody, what's going on? Maxx here, got another Master Duel video for you all. So today we are coming back to Ishizu Vernusylph Adamancipator once again. I think this, alongside with Tearlaments, was one of the decks I was most excited to try out in this meta, and I do like it quite a bit. I think the Vernusylph package does add a lot of gas to the Adamancipator cards. I keep finding myself thinking, like, wow, if the Vernusylphs really had come out before Tears, like, this deck would have torn up. I really think this deck would have been insanely good. But I am also really up on Adamancipators as a whole anyway. I really like this deck, and I really like playing it, so of course I was always going to be really up on the Vernusylphs and the power and consistency that they added. Really more consistency than power they add to the overall build. We have changed up the build a little bit since the last time we played it. I decided to add a couple more techs to counter Tearlaments. I think if you're not playing Tearlament, and frankly even when you are playing Tearlament, that does have to be kind of one of the forefront questions of your mind when you're deck building in this meta is, what am I going to play against Tearlament? What can my deck do that will uniquely offer it that edge? Because Tearlament already has the inherent edge of being the most powerful deck currently in the game, so you need to find some kind of niche to out them specifically. We have in the extra deck, and we had before, the Herald of the Arclight and the Abyss Dweller to help us with that, but I thought maybe we could use a little more extra help in that regard, so I added some tech to the main deck as well. I decided to finally craft a copy of Gravekeeper's Trap. I actually wanted to try this in Tearlaments as well. I was going to play a build that just had 3 Foolish Burial Goods with this and Exchange of the Spirit, but of course, literally the day after I crafted this, Foolish Burial Goods got announced to going to 1, so I don't know that I'm necessarily going to try that out moving forward. It won't be relevant anyway, the 3 Foolish Burial Good build that I had in mind post-ban list. But at the same time, I think it's fine to just have a copy of this laying around. Indeed, being able to set up Exchange of the Spirit with this card is a decent tech in just about anything that plays Ishizu, but the cool thing about Gravekeeper's Trap is that it can add any Earth Fairy, so it ends up playing really well with the Vernusylphs in that regard as well. So I definitely don't regret crafting this. I think this was still a fine craft overall. I just don't get to use it in that one particular Tearlaments build idea that I had. But in any case, the Vernusylph of the Flourishing Hills is one of many cards that can be searched off. That you could grab that, you could grab the Awakening Forest, or you could grab the Misting Seedlings. It really just depends what you need. Funnily enough, it's actually almost never right to grab the Flourishing Hills, because that just gets another Vernusylph card. If you need to send a card from deck to the graveyard, you can grab the Awakening Forest. If you want one of the Ishizu cards specifically in your hand, you can search that out with Misting Seedlings. That also makes this Gravekeeper's Trap Exchange of the Spirit lock a little more consistent. You just have to mill the Exchange of the Spirit, but if you need the Gravekeeper's Trap, you can just search the Mudora off the Misting Seedlings, and then it's not hard to have another Earth Fairy in hand to pitch off the Mudora to then activate the Gravekeeper's Trap directly from your deck. And even if you have the Exchange of Spirit in your hand, you can just discard it off the Gravekeeper's Trap. So in theory, not too difficult to set that up. It's really more about getting the Exchange of the Spirit in the yard, to be honest. The other bit of anti-Tearlaments tech that we have here is the Barrier Statue of the Drought. This card is not hard to summon at all in this deck. Of course, we can hit it off our Adamancipator Excavates, although keep in mind if you do that, you have also locked yourself into only special summoning Earths for the rest of the turn. But the much easier way to get that out is literally any Vernusylph card. At the end of your combo, you can just throw out a Vernusylph monster, get the effect, and then special summon the Barrier Statue of the Drought from your graveyard. Just tack it on to the end of your play there. Of course, Tearlaments cannot make any plays when they can only special summon, Earth monsters. To be fair, they can still normal summon a monster and battle over it, but this is Adamancipator. The idea is that we're going to have a huge end board in addition to the Barrier Statue of the Drought. Never just the Barrier Statue by itself. Not ideally, anyway. We are, on top of that, still playing the Braver Dragon package as well for some extra unfair shenanigans. We get to do some hand ripping with this deck too. Good not just against Tearlaments, but against literally every deck, so kind of figured there's no reason not to play it. For those who are new to seeing the Braver package in Adamancipator, the way that you summon it is with the Awakening of the Possessed Nefariouser Archfiend, using this to bring back an Analyzer, which you can do by sacking either, more commonly, also the Earth Charmer, but also optionally Fairy Tale Snow, sacking one of those alongside a level 4 or lower Earth monster, and that will allow you to set up your Braver for the Smoke Grenade and the Rod of Silence. Alright, so that covers the build and all the updates that I made to it there. Let's go ahead and break it down card by card, and then we'll look at some gameplay. So we're playing 1 Herald of Orange Light, 3 Maxx, 3 Adamancipator Seeker, 3 Adamancipator Researcher, 2 Cartorhyn, the hidden gem of the Seafront, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 3 Vernusylph of the Misting Seedlings, 1 Gigantes, 1 Barrier Statue of the Drought, 3 Koa'ki Mirror Guardian, 1 Revival Golem, 1 Tackle Crusader, 1 Fairy Tale Snow, 2 Adamancipator Analyzer, 3 Koa'ki Mirror Supplier, 3 Rockband Xenoguitar, 3 Vernusylph of the Flourishing Hills, 3 Vernusylph of the Awakening Forest, 2 Keldo the Sacred Protector, 3 Mudora the Sword Oracle, 2 Kelbek the Ancient Vanguard, 2 Agido the Ancient Sentinel, 1 Awakening of the Possessed Nefariouser Archfiend, 1 Block Dragon, 1 Foolish Burial, 2 That Grass Looks Greener, 1 Smoke Grenade of the Thief, 1 Rod of Silence Chaos, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Exchange of the Spirit, and then 1 Gravekeeper's Trap. There is our main deck. For the extra deck, we're on 1 Herald of the Arclight, 1 Adamancipator Risen Raptite, 1 Adamancipator Risen Dragite, 1 Power Tool Braver Dragon, 1 Baron de Fleur, 1 Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Chengyang, 1 Abyss Dweller, 1 Gallant Granite, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Asa the Earth Charmer Immovable, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess, 1 Access Code Talker, and then 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. Alright, there's our list. Now let's look at some gameplay. Okay, so our first duel for this video is going to be up against Madolches, which is actually another deck I've been thinking of trying out. I would need to craft quite a few ultras for it, but thanks to the duel pass, I think I actually have enough ultras to spare beyond my usual that I like to keep in the bank to make the deck. So if Madolches is a deck you really want to see me play, absolutely let me know in the comments section below, and yeah, the more comments I see about it, the more I will definitely prioritize it, but I think I'd like to try it anyway. Just seems really good with the Vernusylphs in particular. Plus, like, Madolche has never really been, like, a bad deck. It's kind of been, like, the same rogue power level that it's been pretty much the entirety of its existence on Master Duel. In fact, if anything, it's only undervalued now just because of how good tier limits are. The Vernusylphs do add quite a bit to the Madolche playbook there. We're doing some fairly standard Adamancipator stuff ourselves. We did end up having to banish a couple of Earth monsters out of our hand in order to be able to summon this Block Dragon, but that's honestly completely fine. Anything you need to do to summon Block Dragon is definitely advisable. We also get to go for a Braver hand rip here, so if you're wondering how that's done, boom, just like I explained in the profile, we summon the Nefariouser straight out of the main deck, using the Asa and a level 4 lower Earth. Getting back the Analyzer, now Braver equips the Rod of Silence and the Smoke Grenade. Looking at my opponent's hand, I want to take out that Lava Golem, so that way they can't use it to pick apart my negates at the end of the turn. Oops, sorry about that. One of my alarms is going off there. Oh hey, you know what? That was actually my alarm to remind me to sign up for the MCS here in a little bit, so... Alright, got that coming up here soon. Anyway... Alright, so... There is the Raptite now. We have not used any of the Vernusylph effects, so... that's pretty rad. We get to just go ahead and... use that. That is something you do have to be mindful of when you are... playing with this deck, is that the Vernusylphs do lock you into Earths, and sometimes that is going to be a little bit dicey, right? It means that we're not able to use the Raptide effect to extend, as well as some of our extra deck monsters, like we can't use Appaloosa in order to protect the, what is it called? Rest of our board state, really. Sorry, I was a little distracted by my phone there. I promise I'm putting that away now. Alright, we can summon a Baron as well as a Block Dragon. We end with the IP and an Abyss Dweller as well. Just in case our opponent does happen to be on tier limit, we actually did not get to really see... Oh no, we did get to see what they were playing. We saw they were on Modolce. But I know the Modolce is usually a Shizu stuff, so I just decided to make the Dweller here anyway. Plus, it's not really like we had a different rank 4 to make. I mean, we probably could have just made something else with the materials, but... we get to hand rip with the Braver once again. I'm going to go ahead and chain the Abyss Dweller to this Vernusylph for the Mystic Seedlings just to get that active. Even though it's not going to... That card doesn't resolve in the graveyard, so it still gets to activate here. Or rather, they still get back their Modolce Hoot Cake. When the Hoot Cake is summoned, I'm just going to go for my Nightmare Unicorn. That is going to very nicely take care of that. And they do still have the normal summon for Angeli, but we can negate that with either Koa'ki Guardian or Braver. It doesn't really matter which. We have our choice of cards to negate. So, yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for that game. It's a pretty simple one against Modolce there. Let's go ahead and move on to the next duel. Next game is going to be against Sword Soul Teni. Haven't seen this one around in a while. They are playing a lot of interesting tech against tier limits. The Evenlies, which I think are pretty good, and a single copy of Nekomane King, which I think is much less good. I think the one Nekomane King, especially in a deck like Sword Soul, is just a meme, right? Because they're, like, never going to... Like, here's the thing, right? Tier Limit's never going to blind mill you on turn 1 if they don't already know you're playing Sword Soul. And even if they do, the most they're ever going to mill you is 10 cards. And trying to hit the one Nekomane King out of 10 cards getting milled is just, like, the odds are so low. Like, even when your opponent does mill, which they often don't, the odds are so low of milling that one Nekomane King that it cannot be worth playing it, like, in a deck that doesn't benefit from it in any other way, like, otherwise. It's kind of why Nekomane King in general is a meme, because, like, what deck can really make use of a random level 1 Earth Beast? Arguably, maybe Tri-Brigade can use it as a material, but that's about it. But anyway, our opponent gets a pretty familiar looking setup here. I think a lot of us would be very nostalgic to face this most of the time, instead of, you know, tier limit boards. But yeah, we're stirring down a Baron, Protoss, and Chi Shao. Our opponent's got a Maxx to boot. That said, we have, like, a very, very good hand to play through this with, and given that I'm on Adamancipator and I'm going second, I'm just going to push this Maxx. I generally do this most of the time, even against a board like this. Yeah, I think that, honestly, it's not hard at all to out, like, a board say like this. I will admit, I will freely admit here that I got lucky hitting this Koa'ki Guardian, but at the same time, hitting one Guardian out of 2 Excavates, really, the odds to do that are pretty good. Like, it's not unthinkable. But what this lets me do is, this allows me to summon this Dragite and threaten to clear my opponent's board, and then when they chain both Chi Shao and Baron, I get to negate and destroy both of them with Koa'ki Guardian, so that's pretty rad. The other thing, too, about playing through Maxx right now is, nobody's on Nibiru, because Nibiru is terrible against... It's not terrible, but it's not that good at all against tier limits. It just ends up proccing all of their effects because it sends them all by a card effect, so, yeah, not that great. But because I know that, you know, this Sword Soul player is extremely likely to not be on Nibiru, I kind of have full license to just play however I want here. Now, you might have noticed that I did not actually bounce this Arch Nemesis Protoss, and you might be wondering why I didn't do that. Well, the reason is that I don't want my opponent to end up stopping my Gallant Granite with an infinite impermanence here. And given how many cards they have in hand, it's very, very likely that they have an imperm somewhere in here. But if this Protoss is on the board, they're not going to be able to do anything about it. But they do get to Ash Blossom. I do have the Baron for that. But if my opponent had Ash Blossom and Imperm, that would have been enough to have stopped me here. And then I wouldn't have had anything to combat the million cards in their hand. So, yeah, definitely wanted to make sure we keep that Protoss on board, so that way the Imperm is not tripping us up here. We do have to out it eventually, though, if we want to try to go for lethal this turn. Opponent's got a DD Crow, another anti-tier limit tech they have, which also manages to do some collateral damage on our block dragon here. We still, of course, get the searches. We're not able to recur it more or less ad infinitum. Although, to be fair, our graveyard isn't that extensive anyway. We probably wouldn't have gotten that many summons off of it, but regardless, it's going to make finding lethal a bit more of a task here. Alright, now I'll use the Asa to bring back the Maxx. Gonna get the Excavate with the Adamancipator, what is it? The Researcher here. I could just summon a barrier statue, but I do have to go for a Nightmare Cerberus first, just to get rid of the barrier statue. And that way I can use this to go into the Underworld Goddess. So I did actually have the option to go into Underworld Goddess earlier, but I wouldn't have had lethal on board. I actually would have had 7,900 damage on board because I would have had the Underworld Goddess and the Baron and then a Koa'ki Guardian. But I realized that the Awakening of the Possessed actually has 2,000 attack instead of 1,900, so very sneakily I was able to find 8,000 points of damage. The other thing too is that access code wouldn't have worked because I would have had to have cleared my opponent's board before going for lethal. My opponent would have been able to use the Imperm to set the access code back down to 2,300 attack. So I needed to find lethal here that didn't use access code and played around, but still also managed to get rid of the, what is it called? Oh, I could have summoned access code anyway. I just realized because of the Archfiend Protos. Whew, excuse me. But yeah, managed to win against Sword Soul despite them having their setup as well as the Maxx for me there. So there's that game. Let's go ahead and go into the next one here. Okay, for this one we're going to be up against a pure Vernusylph deck. They're not even using the gadgets, which I've run into Vernusylph that uses gadgets. And I've actually done a little bit of research into pure Vernusylph just to see if it was like good or worth playing. And it does seem like the majority of builds are playing those gadget monsters there. But anyway, I could take the first turn. I opened grass, so like, you know, we're just off to the races here. Gonna proc a Xenoguitar to get back this Adamancipator Seeker. Looking at the rest of our yard, we have a Fairy Tale Snow and a Keldo in here, so that's pretty good. Gonna try to start our plays, but the opponent has a, what do you call it, a Maxx for us. So I'm actually going to chain Fairy Tale Snow in response, because what I'm going to end up doing is ending on an Abyss Dweller here, just in case my opponent is playing tier limits. I will set up the Block Dragon in my graveyard as well, just to, because I can. There's kind of no reason not to. Normally, of course, I'd summon a Revival Golem there, but here, like I said, just for being cautious and making sure we out tier limits, I'm just going to make an Abyss Dweller before we pass. The opponent reveals their extravagance, they're very much not on tier limit, but still just going to fire off the Abyss Dweller in response, just in case they are playing a deck that's got graveyard-based effects here. Alright, so they have a lot of card advantage. They're going to start with a Vernusylph for the Flourishing Hill, sending a Morphage Goliath. Very interesting earth monster, which is going to prevent me from special summoning from the extra deck while it's on the field. I get to trigger the Agido in my hand, and Agido can bring back any Earth Fairy, so that means my Vernusylph for the Flourishing Hills is coming back to the board. Opponent then gets to play a Guard Dragon, or a Grand Tusk Dragon, to blow up 2 of my cards, and then go up to 2,600 attack points. I'll get back the Adamancipator Researcher here, just because it's a little more generic. I definitely don't want my opponent to drop this Regulus on me, though, so I'll take this opportunity to use Keldo to put back their Shuffler, their Regulus that they're trying to summon, and then my Abyss Dweller back in my extra deck as well. They do, of course, get to summon a different Earth monster, but, you know, at least it's not Regulus. The Field Spell is going to try to put back my Fairy Tale Snow here, but I get to just chain it, you know, because Fairy Tale Snow is really good. And, yeah, I'll use the Snow to turn this Morphage face down. I also actually get to send a Tackle Crusader with the Xenoguitar that I ended up banishing, so I will turn their Grand Tusk Dragon face down as well. It's going to make their board a lot less impactful here. They still get to have this Vernusylph that they can attack twice with and double its attack points, but it's doubling to a whopping 2,200, so not really concerned about it at all. After that, they get to link into an Asa and bring back my, or try to bring back my Mudora, but really they just end up forcing it. I'll use this to put back one of their cards, but This does also prevent me from having enough Earth monsters in my graveyard to necessarily block Dragon right away during my upcoming turn here. My draw for turn is Kelbek, but it doesn't really matter because I did already have the Researcher in hand anyway. I could have just summoned the Block Dragon, but it's extra nice here because now I get to special the Researcher, so I haven't used my normal. Could be relevant if we hit a Supplier and then I can normal summon the Guardian. I don't end up hitting anything here, but that doesn't matter because I can still just sink the Researcher plus Block Dragon into Baron de Fleur. Now I have an Omni Negate, I can blow up one of their cards, I get the 3 searches off Block Dragon, I still have my normal summon, so I'm just going to do Analyzer Seeker Researcher here. Or Analyzer Seeker Cartorhyn because I've already used Researcher. Normaling the Analyzer, specialing the Seeker. Get to Excavate, beautiful, I saw a Guardian there, so we'll just summon that. I'll pitch the Cartorhyn just to have the Water Monster Grave as I'm about to sink into the Dragite. Not that I think my opponent's going to activate a spell or a trap card, but I do get to use the Dragite to bounce ideally their whole board here. And yes, we did excavate 3 rock monsters, so there goes all the monsters back to their hand. I still have a Block Dragon I can summon. I still have lots of plays I can make. The opponent's just going to wisely surrender right then and there. So we do still have another game to take a look at. Let's dive straight into it. And our final opponent is going to be on Sword Soul Teni yet again. I was surprised to have run into, frankly, this many non-tier limit decks, but to be fair, these games are in Diamond 1. Diamond 1, it really seems like you either go against, like, all tier limits or just a few tier limits with some other decks sprinkled in here. So I can take the first turn here. I'm going to start by normally Analyzer and then specialing the Researcher from my hand. I'll begin by activating the Analyzer. We do end up revealing a Supplier and a Cartorhyn, so we have a couple of options. Going to get the Supplier, ideally making 2 level 4 monsters on board in order to, or summoning 2 level 4 monsters to the board in order to make the Gallant Granite. We did hit another monster off of the Researcher. We get a Xenoguitar here. That's very, very good. Now I'll use my Supplier and my Xenoguitar to go into the Gallant Granite, leaving my tuners on board for potential future use. I'm going to activate my Gallant Granite's effect to add, of course, who else but Block Dragon, which I now get to summon. I'll just banish the other 2 Earths from my hand. I could have maybe used the Vernusylph there, but that also would have locked me in an Earth effect, so I think it's fine just to send them that way. Alright, now we can sync with the Block Dragon into the Baron de Fleur. That will, of course, allow us to get the Block Dragon Search. I'm sure you all kind of know the drill by this point. Notably, we do get to get the Barrier Statue of the Drought with a Cartorhyn here, so I can just kind of tack that onto the end of my combo here. Alright, we get to Synchro Summon for the Dragite. Now I'll activate the Seeker's effect, but even if we whiff here, it's totally fine. I think we do actually end up whiffing if I recall correctly. Yep, so no summoning there. I'll just banish these 3 for Block Dragon, and I'll sync for the Chengyang that's in my extra deck now. And then, like I said, I'm just going to pitch the Cartorhyn and tack this Barrier Statue onto the end of my play. So, yeah, my opponent can just normal summon and battle over the Barrier Statue, but that's totally fine with me because that means that they are not, it means that they are not going to win the duel that turn because they've used their battle phase just to get rid of the ability to try to make plays through my Maxx and my negates here. Indeed, Monk of the Teni isn't even enough because his attack points get reduced. Opponent does have a Shathana in their hand they're going to try to use here, but I'm just going to use the Baron to negate it. Just because of how desperately they're trying to get rid of this Barrier Statue, I assume the Baron is fine there, and it does ultimately end up being fine. It doesn't look like they're able to make any more plays through the Barrier Statue, ultimately conceding and handing me the win there. So, that's a nice little update to our Shizu Vernusylph Adamancipator build. It's more than a bit of a mouthful, but yeah, in any case, let's go ahead and move on to the outro now. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.